Hey everyone, welcome back to my series of videos I've dubbed the Skeptic's Guide to Miracles. We've been dissecting the question of miracles and eyewitness accounts. Remember how we saw philosopher David Hume might have been a little bit hasty in dismissing miracles based on pure probability? Turns out, strong enough, solid testimony can tip the scales. Then we tackled the issue of conflicting miracle claims across different religions. We even proposed a common sense filter called doubts to see if these stories deserve any investigative effort. But what if a miracle actually passes the filter? How then do we separate a genuine event from the fake? Enter Charles Lesley, a 17th century Anglican theologian who was way ahead of his time. In his debates with the deists, Lesley established 4 key criteria for judging historical claims. These criteria act as a powerful tool to sift fact from fiction, especially when it comes to extraordinary events. Number 1, the event needs to be something people could have witnessed firsthand. Think sights and sounds, things that wouldn't be left up to interpretation. Number 2, the event needs to happen publicly in front of a large audience. Imagine a big history-making moment, not something just hidden away. Number 3, there should be not only written records of the event, but also ongoing traditions or practices that keep the memory alive. Think holidays, ceremonies, or even everyday customs. Number 4, these traditions and records have to have started right around the time the event supposedly happened. No waiting decades or centuries to put up a plaque. Now, Lesley wasn't saying that every historical event needs to tick all 4 boxes. But if something passes these tests with flying colors, then we can feel pretty confident that it actually took place. For example, America's fight for independence is a classic case. The colonists fought battles, declared their freedom publicly, and established Independence Day as a national holiday all around the same time. Now, these conditions also make it really tough for somebody to fake history. Think about it. The first 2 rules, census and public, would stop a liar from making up a story they supposedly witnessed themselves. Imagine a fraudster trying to convince some people from St. Louis that the Mississippi River just parted for them yesterday. There's no way that they would believe it. The next 2 rules, ongoing tradition and time, make it hard to lie about something that supposedly happened way back in the day. People would challenge the whole story if there weren't any traditions or monuments to back it up. For example, a liar couldn't convince us that everyone for the past 1,000 years had been chopping off part of their pinky finger in memory of some event. We just look at our own hands. Let's apply this to the story of the Israelites' escape from Egypt. A fraudster couldn't have made up the Torah later and presented it to the Israelites as their ancient law. The Torah itself claims to be the law of the land, and the people would have known that it wasn't true. It's like trying to invent a whole new set of laws for England and convince everybody that it's always been that way. Just as impossible as convincing the Jews that they always knew and followed the Torah since Moses, a whole nation wouldn't come to accept a fake history or legal code, especially one they supposedly always had. Furthermore, the Torah itself provides even more evidence against a forgery. Remember, the Torah didn't just tell stories. It also lays out a whole set of laws and traditions, things like festivals, the Sabbath, temple rituals, and even what the priests wear. These aren't just random details, they're all connected to the history of the Israelites' escape from Egypt. Imagine a liar trying to convince the Israelites that they and their ancestors had always followed these practices. Lesley asks, was it possible to have persuaded a whole nation of men that they had known and practiced all these things if they had not done it? Someone might argue, hey, well, maybe they have the laws and traditions already, and the liar just gave them new religious meaning. For example, maybe the Israelites already avoided eating bread with leaven for a whole week, but the liar came and convinced them that it was to remember the Exodus. Lesley says that this is a long shot. First, some of the laws themselves make perfect sense in the context of the Exodus story. The Israelites don't eat leavened bread for a week, because their bread didn't have the time to rise during the hurried escape from Egypt. They live in booths for a week because that's how they lived in the desert. Second, think about how hard it would be to convince a whole nation to give new religious meaning to so many of their traditions. As Lesley puts it, it would be practically impossible. Imagine this. You walk into your local coffee shop and you try and convince everyone that the 3rd Tuesdays of every February have always been a day of feasting and merriment, a celebration of the Great Donut Deliverance of 1643. You claim that there's a whole well-known history behind it, with parades and jelly-filled tributes, but nobody remembers any such event. On top of that, you pull out a dusty, never-been-seen-before book detailing the epic donut rescue, supposedly written by an eyewitness. It's pretty unlikely that anybody would buy your story, right? That's basically what Lesley is saying about the Torah. The idea that someone could have forged the Torah, convinced the Israelites it was their ancient law, and gotten them to adopt a whole new set of traditions based on a fake history, well, that just strains credulity. Alright, so Lesley's 4 marks make it really tough to fake history. But how do they apply on something like the story of Jesus' resurrection? Well, according to Lesley, the story does check all 4 boxes. Let's break it down. Senses. The Gospels tell us that Jesus appeared to people after his death, talked with them, ate with them, and even let them touch him. They were real physical appearances for the witnesses. Public. Jesus didn't appear to just 1 or 2 people in secret. The Gospels say that he showed himself to many people at once, including his disciples and even a crowd over 500. Ongoing tradition. The church itself is a big public monument to the resurrection. Plus the fact that Christians switch their day of worship from Saturday to Sunday is a public action remembering the event. Time. Both the founding of the church and the switch to Sunday worship happened right around the time of the resurrection is supposed to have taken place. There's no gap of centuries where this story could have been made up. The first 2 marks, senses and public, mean that the original witnesses weren't fooled. Everyone with eyes and ears could hear and see what was happening. The last 2 marks, actions or ongoing traditions and time, make it really hard for someone to invent the story later. Think about it. If the story was fake, how could you get a whole movement to start to celebrate it, especially so soon after it supposedly had happened? But what about miracles in other religions? Take Muhammad's supposed splitting of the moon, or his night journey through the sky. Nobody saw those things, only, allegedly, Muhammad himself. We just have his word for it. Or think Mormonism. Martin Harris said that he saw Joseph Smith's golden plates, but he described his experience as seeing with the spiritual eye. The same deal with all these crazy stories about the Greek and Roman gods. Did Hermes really steal sheep? Did Zeus really turn into a bull? There's just no public verification of any of this, and even the poet Ovid, with all of his tales of transformations, wasn't claiming that they were actually real. Sure, these pagan religions had priests, festivals, and traditions, but they often don't line up with Lesley's 4th mark, starting right after the supposed events. Think about it, if the stories about Bacchus were made up way later, the whole crazy wine festival wouldn't prove anything. And their priests weren't chosen from the gods themselves, but by regular folks much later on. Lesley's framework is a tool for evaluating historical claims, including religious miracles. The Jesus story and the Exodus seem to fit. So, what do you guys think about Lesley's framework? Is it onto something? Or is Lesley, on something? Can you think of other historical claims, religious or not, that would pass his criteria? Leave them in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching.